Shoto Todoroki is an incredible living story of how expectations can crush a person. From the moment Todoroki was born, he was never like the other kids in the eyes of Xehther. He saw him only as a means of accomplishing his own goals. Xehther chased after being the #1 hero all his life, and the more he tried, he realized he couldn't match up to All Might. No matter how bad he wanted to be able to. There was always something separating himself from All Might, and this leads Xehther to decide to burden someone else with a burden too hard for even himself to carry. Todoroki isn't born out of love, and he isn't born because he was wanted, but because he was needed. Xehther tried on his own and failed, and so decided to essentially buy out his wife's family in order to let him marry her for her quirk. What a scumbag. He has 3 children, and one specifically that I want to mention, Toya Todoroki, the eldest of the 4 siblings. And just like his younger brother Todoroki, he also had the massive weight of Xehther's expectations placed on him. He was born with an incredibly powerful flame quirk, cremation, but unfortunately that wasn't enough, and Xehther knew it from the start. He goes on to repeat his sins in Todoroki's childhood, if you could even call it that, and it's this time in Shoto's life that his trauma reaches its peak. Todoroki is great because even with all this, he still manages to become a hero at the end of the day. Todoroki was failed by his father at the start. He wasn't allowed to be a kid, and he was viewed as a soldier for Xehther to control, a pawn in the grand scheme of things. And I can't even imagine what that would begin to do to a child. When we think about Todoroki's childhood, I see a lot of us, myself included, fail to acknowledge one fact, that he's just a kid with a powerful quirk, but a kid nonetheless. I think for some reason, when we watch popular media and we see supers with powers on the big screen, we forget oftentimes that these characters are humans. They're based off of people with incredible abilities, but they are humans. Yes, this young boy has 2 elements on his side, fire and ice, but he's also a child, and one that was put through a hellish burden and a tremendous amount of expectations on his shoulders early on, and these expectations crushed Todoroki's spirit. I think the first time watching My Hero Academia, a lot of us think,
oh wow, daddy issues? How interesting.
And then we move on and act like bro didn't just get mistreated as a child and the world just let it slide because Xehther does more good than bad. That's literally how it feels. This all, however, reaches its conclusion early on. Todoroki had one good thing in his life, and that was his mother, who even though we don't get to see much of as viewers with the honor of growing up with a motherly figure, I can understand that regardless of what happens, you can almost always, as a kid, rely on your mom and cry into her arms, but Todoroki had that stripped from him at just 5 years old. It's incredible the awful things Xehther does to Shoto, and after all this, he expects him to just move on as if nothing had happened? It's a buildup that finally reaches its boiling point when Xehther takes away his mom and Todoroki receives his first physical scar in the world because he was related to Xehther, because he looked like Xehther, because he had Xehther's eyes, because he had a fire quirk. If from the very beginning Xehther had raised his kid as a normal person with training here and there, Shoto might have turned out even more powerful than the one we see today. But Xehther decided he needed him to reach his full potential now, and so put the burden of expectations on Todoroki at such a young age. He was failed at the start, and this burden completely crushed him throughout his entire life. He never had a chance, and this broke a young Todoroki. When we first see him in the anime, we see a silent but powerful character, a trope very commonly used in animes, and it isn't until the sports festival where we discover who Todoroki is. The flashback of his backstory is provided, and we see the hardships he faced as a young boy. It isn't until Izuku Midoriya, someone else destined to fail, who in some sort of poetic way knows the opposite of what Todoroki feels like. He knows what it's like to have no expectations placed on him because he grew up being overlooked and underestimated. And it was this very person that finally said something, told Todoroki that it's your quirk, not his, that Todoroki would finally activate his flames again. But there, once again, was Xehther, blocking him from truly accepting his quirk, cheering his son, saying, "Come on, Shoto," in the stands. And I can't even imagine how it would feel to be encouraged by the person who's failed you at every step of the way when you finally feel some semblance of this weight finally momentarily being lifted off your chest. After this, we get the magnificent look into what Xehther always wanted Todoroki to be, through defeating Izuku, the next bearer of One for All. In that way, he finally accomplishes what his father had always wanted of him. He never had a chance until now, but for the first time, we get to see Todoroki momentarily have that weight lifted off his chest, and you can see it in his face and the power behind his final attack. Todoroki from here has some sort of semblance of acceptance of his past through Izuku, and it's after the sports festival arc where we see Todoroki accepting his flames and deciding to use them for good, realizing Deku's right. He would then go on to train under Endeavor and doesn't allow Endeavor to believe that he's doing this for him, but for himself. Todoroki until now has been making sure to let Endeavor know that this entire thing that he's doing isn't for him. He wants him to know that he's only using him, and that he still is absolutely not cool with Endeavor. As much as he is training him, as much as he is housing him, as much as everything that Endeavor is providing him in the sense of being related to him, Todoroki hates him, and he wants to make sure that Endeavor knows that. And it's so sad because Endeavor doesn't even realize why he's acting like this. He simply chalks it up to a rebellious phase. And Todoroki, being a kid, will definitely not speak up about the elephant in the room, so he remains an overpowered, quirked 14-year-old with a massive burden to carry. These expectations that his father would place on him from an early age would crush him, and Todoroki would have to deal with this problem for the very beginning of his hero journey, which eventually he would finally overcome. And this would have only happened because somebody, a true hero in the world, Izuku Midoriya, would tell him that it's his quirk. Once this weight begins to be lifted, we see the true Shoto come out, and he would begin to learn to be less introverted with his classmates and the people that he saves overall. As time goes on, he goes on to help Izuku and Ida with the hero killer, and really be the only reason that they would go on to win. He then even beats Aizawa with the help of Momo, and even though I know that he never would have managed to do this without her, it shows he's becoming more compassionate and open towards his classmates. But just as we think,
Oh yeah, he's going towards the right direction.
we see some of Todoroki's negative personality traits finally coming to the surface. Todoroki's ego comes out to life when Inasa, during the provisional license arc, would begin to try and show Todoroki up, and Todoroki is absolutely not having it. I think that a healthy dose of confidence is normal, but remember, our boy Todoroki is everything but normal. Anyways, this leads me to my next real point, which is Todoroki's father's beginning to his redemption arc. I believe strongly, even without Endeavor's attempts at mending his wrongs, Shoto would still go on to become a great hero, even with his trauma. But this exponentially boosts everything Todoroki felt all his life. The amount of anguish that he holds against his father can be seen showing itself through Todoroki not outright even forgiving Endeavor, even when he interned with his father. And it's only after Todoroki sees his father put it all on the line that he begins to respect the hero Endeavor, not Enji Todoroki, which is a very, very crucial point. It's the very beginning of Todoroki and Endeavor's relationship changing to a more positive one. And finally, it's here that we get to see Endeavor realize what he did to his son. Through him becoming the #1 hero, he realized that he needs to start acting like one. And so, finally would realize the mistakes of what he did to his son so long ago, and he would actually feel some sort of guilt, expecting Todoroki to forgive him outright without actually having done anything in order to receive that forgiveness. And you know what? After a while though, they end up having the most awkward family dinner I've ever seen. Like, my family isn't perfect, but come on, my boy Natsu straight just left the dinner table and was not having it. And the way that he proceeded to get kidnapped was so funny. I mean, bro did low-key deserve it. He didn't even get abused as a kid, he just got neglected. And yeah, I guess that is a part of abuse, but come on, bro. Eventually though, someone in Endeavor's past would come back, the same villain that kidnapped Natsuo, and would end up pretty much coming back for some reason wanting to be killed by Endeavor? I'm still not sure if those were his true motives or if he simply just wanted to get revenge, but that isn't my point. What I wanted to emphasize is that Endeavor's reaction to his son being saved is what I finally want to put my attention on. When Endeavor sees Natsuo be saved, he genuinely looks worried, like he cared. And I think that this was one of the big plot points to Todoroki and Endeavor's relationship, as well as Endeavor's redemption arc that we'd go on to follow as a very interesting subplot in the manga. But all I truly want to get to is just say, all in all, that Todoroki from the very beginning was set up to fail. Could any of you guys imagine being raised the way that Todoroki was, and still throughout all of that having the guts to rise up to the occasion, still become a pro hero and not let your past get the better of you? I think that Todoroki and Toya are two sides of the same coin. They both lived through basically the same thing, and Todoroki, he didn't let that hold him back. Instead, he used that as fuel and motivation. And that's what I love about Todoroki, because even though he doesn't feel realistic in the fact that he has such incredible powers, the way that he's able to overcome these issues feels realistic to me. It's incredible seeing the redemption arc Endeavor goes through. It's incredible seeing Todoroki become a better person throughout the entire My Hero Academia series, and it's incredible watching the fruits of Endeavor's labor with both of his kids finally come to fruition when we would get the reveal of Toya being Dabi, a member of the League of Villains who now has come back from the past to haunt Endeavor, and Endeavor has to face reality and facts that past, he can't just act like it didn't happen and try to make amends for it. It's real, it's there, and his son is a living example of it. Both of them are, and that's why I think that Todoroki is one of My Hero Academia's greatest characters.